Alex, welcome and thank you so much for joining us here. First things first, it would be fantastic if you could give us a little bit of introduction of who you are, what your past projects were, and what you currently do.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. So my name is Alex Srednoselac. I'm a filmmaker from Indiana in the United States, right outside of Chicago. My filmmaking career, if you want to call it a career, started when I was probably about 12, honestly, even earlier than that. Like I've always taken an interest in movies and the filmmaking process. So like when I was real young, I was really into like drawing and stuff like that. Like I was really into Disney movies and, like wanting to become an animator or just being fascinated by animation. But that kind of wind down a little bit as I got into middle school, when my parents actually gave me a camera and I would film my friends and myself skateboarding. And then it was just all downhill from there. So made a lot of, skits and shorts and obviously the skateboard videos. And eventually that kind of transitioned into more narrative stuff. I spent most of my college years, making short films and working on as many other projects as I could. Nothing major, but if somebody had something going on, I tried to get on that set. And yeah, that kind of led me into writing more scripts and eventually making my first feature film. Started shooting in 2017. Finished. We started in February 2017. Finished in June, and then I released it. Did self distribution, if you want to call it self distribution, through Film Hub in Amazon Prime in 2020. Also theatrical as well. And then, yeah, tried to just keep making short films here and there. I haven't done anything in the last couple of years, and I'm trying to change that now, which we can talk about. But to try to stay with the community, I've started a YouTube channel where I'm kind of doing something similar to you, right? Talking to filmmakers, learning about how they're making their no budget independent feature films. I talk to a lot of people who make films with a budget too, but definitely, lower budgets for sure, but just trying to learn about what they're doing. I talked to, I've talked to a few distributors as well to learn about how they're doing things. And I just try to keep myself engrossed in the process, even if I'm not necessarily making a film.
Great. And I really want to try and condense as much of that information that you've gathered, both from your own experiences as well as from interviewing, everybody on your own YouTube channel and so on as well, into this, next 45 minutes or an hour,
Yeah.
to essentially give all of our listeners as much information as possible on how they can successfully self-distribute their own films. And I do think that self-distribution has become something that is a little bit more mainstream than perhaps it was 5 or 6 years ago, but
Right.
there's still a huge amount of mystery as to how it works, how well it works.
Right.
And for that, I wanted to ask you, what were your expectations when you first self-distributed your feature film, and versus how you feel about it now, and and how did those expectations live up to the reality? And in general, could you just tell us a little bit more about that feature film that you self-distributed in 2020?
Yeah, so let me take a step back before I get into the distribution. So, uh, basically, the main, I mean, obviously, I've always just wanted to make films in general, but this specific feature, I knew it was, I call it, I've never said this on camera yet, so this is the first time I'll ever say this, but I called it Film School the movie. So it was like I'm just gonna just dive into any crazy process, and just see how things work, right? Like I'm like I want to get into movie theaters. I want to go through the whole process with distribution. I want to just learn as much as I can, make as many mistakes as I can, et cetera, et cetera. To give you a little bit more of my background too. I used to work at a movie theater, so I had a relationship with with the theater chain. So I already knew how movies were being distributed, marketed, how they were, just even just getting the movie to the movie theater and putting it on a projector. Like I knew how to do that, right? So I'm like, I'm just gonna try to do as much of this as I can on a budget, and just see where I can go with it. So back in 2017 when I made the movie, I didn't really have any expectations of what I was going to do with it afterwards. I knew I was obviously going to want to try to get it out into the world, but I wasn't really thinking about that at this point. And that's not really something I would recommend to people. Obviously, it's good to have some sort of a plan. But like I said, this was film school, the movie for me. So I wasn't even thinking about, how do we do things properly? Let's just kind of go with the flow. And the next time I make one thing I like to say is it's always easier to make a movie the second time, right? So if you can make your second movie should be theoretically better than the first. But finished the movie. It took me so long to edit just because I did everything myself. So like I edited the movie. I eventually had to do all the sound design, which honestly that took me the longest. Like editing the movie probably took me 6 months, but doing all the sound and stuff took me like 2.5 years. And then I wanted to do the theatrical release too. So just constantly testing the movie. Like I really appreciate my old boss at the movie theater for letting me just stay overnight and just test my movie over and over and over again, because I probably cost them a lot of money, in xenon bulb hours just testing my movie. But once about 2019 hit, I was still working at the movie theater, and my boss, we did like this corporate meeting every year where everybody in the corporate office and all the head managers, so I was an assistant manager at the theater, would go to this corporate meeting and just do whatever, I guess. I don't remember. Just talk about goals and stuff and projections, whatever you do in a corporate office, right? But all the bigwigs are there. So my boss is like, "Hey, why don't you go pitch to the marketing department and the film bookers and all that your film and see if they want to put it out." So I did that, and they were all on board with it. So I'm like, "Cool." So and I already wanted to do at least one screening. So I was going to do a free screening for all the cast and crew and just anybody who wanted to show up. So we got like, I don't remember exactly, but it was around 150 people ended up showing up to that initial screening. So I think that was June of 2019 that was going on. And then I wanted to do some festivals and such. And then after all the festivals and all that, I had to start looking at more seriously at distribution options. A distributor approached me, which we can talk about a little bit. They ended up being predatory, so I didn't go with them. So that kind of opened my eyes into looking at some alternative options. But yeah, so around the end of 2020, I really started looking at more options, like what I could do with this. And then I distributed a short film that I did on Amazon Prime Video Direct. So I'm like, okay, I did this successfully. I could probably do cashing out as well. So I kept that in the back of my hand, right? But I wanted to do the theatrical thing first because they're like, we'll give you a run. So they're like, as long as you want, as many cities as you want, you can basically do whatever you want and make all the money back, which is like a dream scenario, right? It cost me no money from the theater. At least like there was expenses, like I made posters and then made a DCP and all of that. But like any money from the theater or any money that it generated at the box office, I was able to keep. But I didn't actually get to keep that for reasons we'll talk about. But so we did, I think my first screening was January 15th, somewhere around there of 2020. And then we ran it for, I want to say 10 weeks in 10 different cities. So mostly around the Midwest. This was a Midwest chain, but they also had a random theater in Florida. So, I just did a couple screening, not many. It would be like on a Wednesday night at like 7 o'clock. So it wasn't on the weekend or anything. Had a lot more screenings in my local theater just because, I had a lot more pull there. But just tried to squeeze as much as I could from those other 10 cities. It didn't do much. So honestly, it was probably a waste of time. But, the fact I wanted to be, for marketing reasons, I wanted to be able to say I did a 10 city run. I never said if it was successful or not, but I wanted to at least say that. So once that was done, that ended at the beginning of February-ish. So then I decided, okay, we're going to put this out VOD on, I think it was February 24th of 2020. So that was my Amazon Prime release. And then after that, let that run. That did pretty well because that's when the pandemic started and people were staying indoors. And, I did a little bit of marketing and it ended up working. Like there were some days where I was making like $100 a day on rentals and purchases, which was nuts to me. Like when it started, I was only making a couple bucks, but the numbers just jumped up really quick. It died down pretty quick too, but after that, I just kind of stayed with Amazon for a bit, and then once I was able to get on Prime as well, so I did TVOD, transactional video on demand, and then I did the subscription version of Prime when you were still able to do that, and that did pretty well too. But I think in August they stopped doing that or stopped allowing it. So I'm like, okay, I need to find some other options. So I started looking at Film Hub. I looked at Film Hub specifically just because I was looking at just different options. Like I kind of just pushed traditional distribution to the side pretty quickly. I listened to Alex Ferrari's podcast, Any Film Hustle, a lot, and he was talking a lot about just self-distribution options in general. So, I mean, that was kind of the inspiration of going that route. But, I listened to an episode specifically about Film Hub, and I'm like, this is pretty easy. Let's give it a try. Even if it's not the best, let's just give it a try. And I put it up there. It didn't do very well, but eventually it got on Tubi like 2 years afterwards. And that's when it started just like really doing well. So unfortunately, Tubi's kind of been like my only main source of revenue right now. But, that was at least getting on Film Hub. That was the main inspiration there, was just that podcast that I listened from Alex Ferrari. But kind of to try to wrap this up, going back to your original question of self-distribution and why I decided to do that, I'm very, controlling is, I guess, I don't know if that's the right word or not, but I really wanted to like learn all the aspects of just distribution, because I listening to Alex's podcast about just all these bad distributors and, just how predatory they can be. I'm like, do I really want to go that route? I think I could do this on my own. I think I'm crazy enough to do this on my own. So just, I guess, naivety was the big reason why I decided to go with self-distribution. So I did Amazon, like I said. I did the theatrical by myself. I did Blu-rays and DVDs by myself. And then eventually went to Film Hub. And then I also put it on Vimeo for like my own kind of streaming service. So I mean that's kind of the backstory there, as far as why I decided to go the route that I did and how we got there.
Okay, thank you for giving that whole overview there. That was really interesting. You mentioned some numbers a little bit about Amazon. Are you comfortable sharing, how much you made in total, for example, from Amazon or from Tubi, and what
Sure.
that kind of looked like?
I made a whole video breaking down every dollar I've ever made. So if I don't do it here, that would be kind of
Fantastic.
hypocritical of me. So absolutely.
Great. Yeah.
Um,
Do you want to tell us a little bit about, I mean, how much you made sort
sure.
of from, Amazon and Tubi, I guess, were the big
Yeah.
earners, right?
Yeah. So I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. But
Mhm.
just to give you kind of some estimates right now. So I started with the theatrical release, right? And I made about $2,000 on that. I didn't see any of that money because the theater went out of business. And unfortunately, when it comes to bankruptcy laws in the United States, uh, even with myself as a creditor, I never saw that money back. So technically I made that money, but I think I saw like $20 of it. Um, but so to kind of give you some perspective too, I spent about 16,000 on the movie. So I sold merch. That merch made, I did print on demand. So anything, I sold or anything I bought to sell, cost of goods sold, I just made back, obviously. So I don't remember how much I spent, but it was probably around 1,500, made around 3,000 maybe of that back. Tubi at this point, I probably made around $6,500, and I've had the last 2 months for some reason have just blown up. I haven't figured that out because I like the Tubi revenue is kind of like roller coastered a lot over the last couple of years. Like I was making a couple $100 every month, and then just like the summer of last year it dropped to like $20 or $30 a month. So I'm like, okay, I guess we're done here. And then last month I made $700, and like I said, I can't figure that out. With Amazon, I think I made around like $1,500 to $2,000. Blu-rays, I made some money on Blu-rays. And then there's some various other things I'm not thinking about, but at this point I've made about 75% of the budget back, if I remember correctly. And if I projected correctly, I should make everything back by the end of next year if everything keeps up. If the Tubi money falls off, because that's the only money I'm making on cashing out right now. If the Tubi money falls off, that's going to be a little difficult to break even on. But I did project that I would break even by the end of next year, the latest.
Okay, wow. I mean, incredible. For for a low budget feature.
Yeah.
A couple of things to give everybody some context. 2020 was a particularly good year for Amazon, for indie filmmakers on
Yes.
Amazon. People were earning stupid money there sometimes, even with films
Yes.
that were like really not great because everybody was locked down, everyone was watching it. That was the point where, as you mentioned, you could still put your indie feature film on their SVOD platform, meaning the subscription video on demand, and get paid. People would watch it for free. You would get paid per hour viewed. And, people were making quite a good amount of money from that. Now you can only put it on the transactional, on the TVOD one, which means that people have to buy or rent it, mainly because Amazon didn't want to keep kind of forking out the money from their subscription for indie filmmakers.
Which is silly because they're only paying a cent per hour. So I made around probably $1,000 that way, and that was penny, literally penny by penny. So I don't know
Yeah.
what the issue was there.
I think the issue was they didn't want to pay that $1,000
I,
and
I
they
guess
realized
I
they don't
guess
have
so.
to.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was interesting. And then it's also interesting what you said about Tubi last summer, because they had an issue with their advertising on the platform. I recently did an interview with Joe Dean from Terror Films, distributor in the
Okay.
US. They work a lot with Tubi, and they were saying that there were weeks where suddenly they were seeing no revenue from Tubi, and that's because they had an issue on their platform, a technical issue, which means that ads just weren't getting played
Oh,
during the time of their films. So that's
wow.
probably the issue that you were experiencing, rather than an issue with people not seeing your film. So that can
I would
sometimes be
I would say
frustrating.
I would say partially. So during the summertime when that was happening, probably, but my Tubi revenue just kind of flatlined for almost an entire year. So like
Okay,
I just now started seeing an uptick recently. I don't know if that's because of my channel and promoting it or what, but yeah, it did flatline for a minute, and a lot of filmmakers who I talked to said the same thing. So I'm glad
interesting.
to see that it's starting to come up a little bit again.
Yeah, I mean, it could also be one after, I think it was Fox that acquired Tubi.
Hmm.
So perhaps they were doing some additional marketing. And also the fact that Tubi is expanding into a lot of different countries right now. So, for
Right.
example, I'm based in the UK. They only came to the UK last October. So
Oh wow.
suddenly there was a whole new market, a whole new country that we're seeing, American films, for example.
Right.
And I think it will only keep expanding with that. So hopefully that revenue will keep going and get you to profitability next year.
Definitely.
Yeah. Um, I also wanted to ask about Vimeo. So were you doing this on Vimeo OTT, sort of your
Yes.
own kind of
Hmm.
streaming? And did you see any kind of significant revenue from that? Because
No, I didn't see. I had a couple rentals and a couple um, purchases, but I'm gonna say I have a theory as to why that is. When I say this was film school, the movie, like I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea how to market things. I had no idea how to do what. So if I had one major tip, just in general, you're going to have to be the cheerleader for your movie throughout the entire process. Like you can't rely on your actors unless you have like a producing partner who's in this 100% like you are. You are going to have to be the cheerleader. That's primarily why I started my own YouTube channel, is a way for me to get the message out that I make films so people can see them. Now, when I was doing this back in 2020, I didn't have the audience that I have now. Like I tried, but it wasn't working, but I was still making content about it. So you need to figure out ways how to, even if it's Tubi, like Tubi, you can just get lucky, just people organically searching, but you need to find a way to drive people to your website. And I don't think I did a very good job with that with Vimeo specifically. I still recommend it to people just because it's such an easy option for people to buy or rent your film. So if, let's just say, like I have an order of operations right now as far as like what I think you should do, and this is always changing. So what today is June 26, 2025. My mind can change at any point in this, right? So you can start with a traditional distributor if you want, and you want to be hands off, right? I think Indie Rights is probably the best option for that right now, but I'm sure there's plenty of others. If that doesn't work out, then you can try something like Film Hub, where you're getting on a lot of platforms. If that doesn't work out, even if it does work out, you can still put your movie on Vimeo if you're on Film Hub. If that doesn't work out, try Vimeo and just promote as much as you can to get people to watch it, because at least you have a way to buy or sell your film. Because the last option, the all else failed option, is to put it on YouTube, and you're not going to make any money if you put it on YouTube unless you just happen to have a monetized channel, which I don't think people realize. And just an audience in general. Like I think if you want to make YouTube work, you really need to have a built-in audience already. So like a great example of this is Chris Stuckman, who's a famous movie reviewer. He's got his movie Shelby Oaks coming out, but if he threw his movie up on YouTube right now, he'd probably get some views on it. Actually, somebody who did this in the last couple of years, I don't remember exactly, he's not making a lot of YouTube videos anymore, but Darius Britt of the channel D for Darius, he did this exact strategy. He spent years making his filmmaking channel and teaching people how to do things with writing stories and just making movies cheaply. And then he decided to make his feature film. And instead of going the traditional distribution route, he's like, I got this massive audience. Let's just throw it up on YouTube. I don't know if he made his money back, but the movie got a lot of views. So like I said, you just need to really be a cheerleader for your movie. Like I'm here almost 6 years later, or 5 years later, still promoting my movie on every single video I do. So I'm trying to test some marketing strategies now too, to like direct people to a direct site where they can pick and choose where they want to watch. But I'm always mentioning my Vimeo channel too. It hasn't done anything, but Vimeo, I mean, it's free to set up. And if you need more than an hour's worth of content, then, it's like, I think $150 for 10 extra hours of content uploads. So I think I think everybody should do it, whether or not it works, just because it's just a great backup option to have to sell your movie.
Yep. It's really interesting. I want to dive into a lot of the things that you just said over here, because I think there's a lot of different interesting topics.
Sure.
First one being YouTube. And it's true that for most filmmakers, if they throw a film on their own YouTube channel, they most likely won't see any revenue unless their channel is already monetized, which is actually pretty hard to do. Yes. You need 1,000 subscribers and you need 4,000 watch hours in the last 12 months. And that 4,000 watch hours is a lot. Like that is really, really difficult, actually, what I found. But another option as well on YouTube, which I don't think enough filmmakers are exploring, is actually licensing your film to YouTube channels that are already monetized and that show films. So there's quite a lot of, really, really big channels with 2-3 million subscribers that just show films. And, you can license your film non-exclusively to them and, and earn 70% of their ad share revenue. So for example, with Amazon, it's now impossible to get onto the Amazon SVOD site, but you can still get onto the Amazon YouTube channel. And apparently I've heard from some filmmakers that is a massive revenue generator right now. So there are those options as well to get into that.
Interesting.
But it's something to consider, because the great thing about YouTube is it's the world's biggest AVOD platform. Right. And it's available in pretty much every single country. So if your film is out on Tubi is now available, last time I checked, in 10 countries, literally, right? Whereas YouTube, with, a few exceptions of like North Korea, etc., it's pretty much available in every single country, which means it's actually, you're missing out on a huge amount of audience if you somehow don't manage to monetize YouTube, because all the other platforms are only available in a couple of different countries. So that's, yeah, that's one thing that I found interesting. I did want to ask about, your own YouTube channel. And how much of an impact do you think that's had? Because I think for most filmmakers, and we can talk in a little bit about, upload process through Film Hub and so on. But as you mentioned, it's becoming easier and easier to get your film out there on some platforms where people can either view it with ads or buy it and rent it. But I think the point of friction is always the marketing, where
Yes.
I've spoken to a lot of, I quite recently spoke to a filmmaker who put their film on Film Hub. It was a decent film as well. It was a low budget film, but a decent film. They put it on Film Hub, they got onto Tubi and onto a couple of other platforms, not just Tubi. And over a period of 12 months, they made $70. Um, and the difference between that and a successful film is the marketing. So I'm wondering on that note, whether that be through your own YouTube channel or, or something else, what were some marketing strategies that you used to get more eyeballs on your film? And did you find that any of them were particularly successful, or more successful than others?
Yeah. So I'll start off by saying none of this is guaranteed to work. Even any marketing strategy is not guaranteed to work, right? Like I know people who put everything into marketing and still don't get views, and a lot of it's just, do people want to watch your film too? So I mean, the marketing is to get them in the door, right? But they still need to stay, and unfortunately, a lot of this is just luck. But I'll share what I did, and hopefully you can get something out of it. So, um, I've this channel that I have started has failed so many times. It has become so many different things, and it's just kind of nuts. But I knew at the end of the day, I needed a platform where I could get my face in front of people and tell people about my movie, because the movie poster certainly helps, but we're in a point right now where social media is really interesting, especially right now, because I feel like people are moving away from wanting to support big corporations and wanting to support individual creators. So the creator itself is kind of the billboard more than anything else at this point. So I realized that very, very early on, just because like I mean, we as filmmakers probably, like I know for me specifically, I will go see a movie if a specific person has directed it. I won't watch a trailer if the right name pops up, my butt's in the seat, right? And I think the same is being true, is starting to transition with creators now. People really, really want to support small creators, but they can't support you if they don't know you exist. So I realized that very, very early on, but I just never figured out what I could make that people would resonate with. Like I've even tried to do the filmmaking advice right after I released the movie. So like I released a course on how to make an indie feature. So like the whole start to finish process from the script to distribution. I made a whole course about that. It flopped. I put it on YouTube. It flopped. I tried to do movie reviews during COVID of all times. I couldn't even get views during the peak of when everybody was getting views. I couldn't get views. So I just kept trying and trying and trying. And eventually, I think it was around 2023, where I'm like, okay, let's try a different direct. Let's just, I don't care how this goes. Let's just make videos about the things that I'm passionate about, and then we'll see how this goes. And I noticed something is that people didn't want to necessarily hear me talk. They liked hearing other people's stories, because I can only tell the same story once and have it resonate, right? Like I could tell you how I made Cashing Out, and what else do I have to say about it? Like I'm still making videos here and there when I have an idea, but I can only tell that story so many times. But I thought I could talk to other filmmakers who are like me and give them a platform to share their stories, give them an audience, and that kind of gives me an audience as well. Like I knew I was good at asking questions. I knew I was good at being curious. So I decided to use that. And it's I don't have a big channel, but I feel like I have a channel that's being pretty impactful. And in return from that, I feel like I'm building, a fan base and audience and all of that. But before all of that, when I was actually releasing my movie, I didn't have all that. So I had to come up with other ideas. So I still made YouTube videos just about the movie, like 10 things you need to know about cashing out. And then I had each of the actors make a short video about their favorite memory. And I tried to just get people excited about it. And there's actually something I'll talk about here at the end that I'm trying to do now. I haven't finished it yet just because I haven't had time, but I'm experimenting with something. But when I did cashing out, I did do some paid ads. So I just made some Facebook ads. And I think that's when I saw that initial Amazon TVOD uptick where I was making like $100 a day. Like I just threw a couple dollars at ads and it just happened to work. I don't know the strategy necessarily that I use. I kind of just put up, like a 5-second clip of where they could find the movie and just hoped it worked. Gary Vaynerchuk has a really interesting marketing strategy that I wish I would have understood a little bit better. But basically, he said, throw a bunch of money, put a video out, throw a bunch of money at it. And then what you need to do is retarget those people who have watched 70% of that video with like a call to action. So just put out a trailer. So I guess envision this for a second. Put out a trailer with no call to action. Just create awareness of your project. And then when it's time to release your project or get them to watch the film, put out another ad only marketed to those people who've watched over 70% of the initial video. And you should see, some good returns. I haven't tested this, but this is something that I would like to try at some point. It's a little harder now with Facebook ads because Facebook kind of took away a lot of the niching down from what I understand. Like you could get real targeted, and I think you can only go a little broader nowadays. It's been a while since I've done a Facebook ad, so I don't know this completely.
If I could just take a moment to connect a couple of dots from some things that you've said over here.
Sure.
I've got a digital marketing background, so I've run a lot of ads for companies and so on. So I can maybe add a couple of details over here as well.
Sure.
One thing that you mentioned was that marketing is only one thing in terms of driving the traffic to the website. The other thing is keeping the people there, which is essentially the retention rate, how much of that film they watch.
Yep.
And that's something that's absolutely crucial, especially on AVOD platforms like Tubi. So if you get, 100,000 people to start watching your film, but all of them drop off after the first minute, you're not going to make much money out of that. And actually, if you drive 100,000 people to that site and all of them only watch 1 minute, that will actually have a really, really detrimental impact to your film, because Tubi will see your film as really low quality because no one's sticking around. Therefore, It will stop promoting it to people, and it might even take it off the platform. So Tubi does regularly take projects off the platform. So the problem, sorry, go on.
No, go ahead.
So the problem with running paid ads, as you mentioned, there is very little targeting that you can now do on Meta, on Facebook, on Instagram. And there's a very good reason for that, because now AI does the targeting for you, and it's far better than we could ever be at it. So actually the results are better. But what that means is you don't control Tubi as a platform. So to get a little bit technical over here, what it means is when you run an ad from Facebook, you can only tell Facebook, get me clicks on this ad, get people to go to this website. But what you can't tell Facebook is get people to come to this website and watch the whole film, because you don't have data on the website to send back to Facebook. So Facebook gets you clickers. Facebook gets you the cheapest clicks to the website. Right. And those people are the people who are most likely to watch 30 seconds and drop straight off. Yep. So with the strategy that you just described, what's really great about this, and this is something that I actually do when I run paid ads for various films that I'm doing the marketing and distribution for, is I run the trailer as an ad, and the objective of that ad is to get people to watch 100% of that video. I then retarget to people. 75% tends to be quite a small audience unless you have a huge budget, but even 50%. So I retarget to the people who watched at least 50% of that video. And I then run the objective of getting them to click on the ad and actually go to Tubi. And when you do that, you have people who are in some shape or form already interested because they've watched at least half the trailer, which means that they're more likely to then watch the rest of the film if they click on that ad. So you're not just getting those clickers who are like, what's this? Oh, not interested. So it's a bit of a qualifying strategy.
So, okay, I want to tell you the strategy that I'm experimenting with to get your thoughts. Now the interview just flipped. Now I'm going into interview mode. Okay, so my strategy that I'm trying to do right now, I'm building a landing page for my film right now. I mean, it's already built. I just need to edit the freaking video. But I have a landing page right now for the film where I've got my trailer, which I could direct, which I will direct all the traffic to this website. Right. So I got the trailer at the top, synopsis, all the festivals and awards that the film has won. And then I got a film of me, or a video. This is the part that I haven't finished yet, a video of me talking about it. So that way I'm creating a connection with the audience before they actually click on the film. And then I have all my different links of where they can choose to watch it. Right. So I know you're not, with the strategy you mentioned, you're directly getting people to the website just to talk or just to watch it. But I want to try a strategy where I'm establishing a connection with the audience before they watch my film, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I do think that's actually a really good strategy. And the reason is you're essentially putting a page on your own website in between the traffic on Facebook and say Tubi, right?
Yes.
So they're going from there, they're going onto your website, and then they're going on various different platforms where they can watch the film. And the great thing about that is you control the platform that's in the middle, right? This would be on your website, for example. And that means you can then tell Facebook is very good, or Meta is very good with their advertising on giving you exactly what you tell it to. So if you tell it to get people to click on this ad, they will get you really, really cheap clicks, but they'll be useless. So what you can now do is go a little bit one step further up the funnel, which means get people who will go onto my website, and on that website, then click on the next link. So you then go a little bit further up and you get people who are a little bit more qualified. And then Facebook will try to optimize. So rather than just getting you the cheapest clicks, it gets the qualified clicks that will then click further. And the people who will do that will be the people who will actually be interested in your video that they see on your website and so on. So it's definitely a good strategy.
Yes. And to take that kind of a step further, I've got some real world examples of, because you mentioned a point there earlier about if you drive 100,000 people to your website or to Tubi, for an example, 1% of them watch, and only, a fraction of that watches past a minute, then that's going to be detrimental to the algorithm, right? My full-time job right now, I work for another YouTube channel, so outside of my personal YouTube channel. So I'm seeing this on the daily. I work for a channel that has 780,000 subscribers right now. All of our videos tend to get over 100,000 views. It's very, very niche. I kind of related to like a reality TV show essentially. But if we like experiment with something and it doesn't do well, any kind of video related afterwards may also not do well. So like, for an example, like it's all about whiskey. Our biggest videos right now are bourbon hunting. So the host of our channel will go to different liquor stores and literally just look for bourbon. But if we do a video outside of that people aren't as interested in, like we try to do these profiles where we'll go to a distillery and feature like somebody who works at the distillery. Well, people aren't as interested in that. And then, our views tank, and then they might tank for a little while. And then that could be detrimental to the entire channel. And that's just across a plethora of videos. With a film, you only have this one piece of content, right? Like it's not like you got a library of stuff that if they're not interested in that, they can go to something else. If somebody's not interested in your film, they're going to go watch another film and then you're done, right? So establishing a connection is very important to me right now. Because like I said, I think right now, the world really wants to support smaller creators, and that's why I'm so bullish just on indie film in general. Like, I don't know if it's a viable career, but just as just being able to get your film out there and get it seen, I think we're in a golden age of that right now, just because I think that's what audience are craving, and they want different stories, you know, in a world of Hollywood films where it's just all sequels and remakes and such. Like, they want more original stories. Now the quality might not be as good as Hollywood, obviously, but there's at least a place for that, and we're seeing that with people who get the results they do with Tubi. And yeah, so if there's one piece of advice that I can leave everybody off on, you need to be the cheerleader for your movie. You need to be the face, and it's going to make a world of difference for your success.
Mm. I do wonder, so being a cheerleader, right? Coming back to this idea of marketing, we talked a little bit about paid ads. You talked a little bit about using your own YouTube channel. Did you use any other social media platforms to promote the film, or any other kind of marketing strategies?
Yeah, so Facebook was the primary one, Facebook ads, and then YouTube were my two big ones. I tried TikTok. It didn't work very well for me. And again, this was at the height of COVID when, you know, you could post anything and get views. For some reason, I didn't get views. So that, you know, just goes back to people being interested or not. I tried Instagram. Instagram didn't work very well for me either, but, you know, I still promoted. I didn't do much on Twitter. So my primary methods of communication were Facebook, just because I could promote to just friends and family and, you know, do the targeted ads like we had talked about. And I built a decent following on the Facebook page. Like, I made a Facebook page for it. But yeah, YouTube and Facebook were the primary platforms.
Okay. And what about PR? Did you go out to try and get reviews, or articles written about the film or anything on that side?
Yes, so that was another thing that I knew I needed to experiment with. My main goal was, I'm getting this movie on Rotten Tomatoes one way or another. I can't tell you how I did it, but my goal was to get on Rotten Tomatoes, and I made it happen. But yeah, I went and looked for anybody who would do a free review, which I don't know. It's been it's been 5 years since I've looked, but there weren't very many. But I managed to get two Rotten Tomato uh, approved critics to review the movie, which was awesome. One of them was kind of local to me, so that was helpful. And then the other one was Film Threat, which anybody can submit a review to Film Threat, either paid or unpaid. I did the unpaid, and they did it, so it may take a little bit longer, but they reviewed my movie, so that was helpful. And then I tried to reach out to other places. Like, I DM Chris Stuckman, which I knew that was a shot in the dark, but, you know, I tried. You don't know until you try. But when the movie came out too, a lot of small outlets were reviewing it as well, which was nice. So I reached out to a couple, and then just a few just organically showed up at some point or another.
And how did you find them? Maybe starting off with Rotten Tomatoes. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe at this point, for you to actually get a rating on there, you need 5, I think. I could be wrong about that.
I am unfamiliar, but right. I had 2, and I submitted. This was back when you could submit to Rotten Tomatoes yourself. I think they have stopped that since. Like, I found a back door to just submit to Rotten Tomatoes. So I'm not 100% anymore. I know something that Indie Rights really presses on is trying to get reviewed from Rotten Tomato critics, like getting a Rotten Tomato score, and they have a whole marketing guide. I don't know what the marketing guide is. You need to get in their funnel before they'll give you their marketing guide. But just Google. Like, all I did was just Google search who will review a film, and, you know, there was a few on there. Most of them were paid. And I'm like, I don't really want to pay for a review, especially if it's not guaranteed. So I just a lot of Google research. I'm sure there's a lot more now, and there's a lot of movie like I watch a lot of TikTok videos for movie reviews. Nobody who's reviewing smaller films like ours, but there's a lot of movie reviewers out there. There's a lot more than there were than 2020, believe it or not. It's just crazy, the night and day difference between now and then. But yeah, I would just do a ton of research and just see who'd be willing to do it.
Yeah, and I do think now reviewers come in all of different shapes, forms, and so
Hmm.
on. So, 6 years ago, the reviewers were really kind of bloggers, right? Whereas now,
Yes.
actually, they're mainly TikTokers and YouTube
Yes.
reviews and video reviews,
Yep.
and going on podcasts.
Yep.
Personally, I love podcasts the most, and that's because they have a really, really long marketing tail, which means when
Yes.
when you have something that's put out on a blog or even a YouTube video, although YouTube is sort of similar to podcasts, but say a TikTok, it might go viral for 3 or 4 days and give you a lot of exposure, but TikTok videos die very, very quickly. Whereas
Yes.
podcast episode can continue living for years when people are searching for them, which is what's great. Did you
And
go on
that
any?
that
Yes.
that kind of ties back to what I was talking about with being the cheerleader, like being you need to be the face of the film. So if you go on a podcast, like try to get on podcasts too. I think you're about to ask me if I try to get on any podcast.
Yep.
I tried to do anything. I got on one podcast, so I would like to get on more. So I'm hoping to that, with people seeing that I'm willing to do interviews, like they'll want to interview me about cashing out too, because I would love to, I love talking about it just in general for one. So I appreciate you asking me to come on, because nobody asks. Everybody asks to be on the channel. Nobody asked me to be on their channel. So I'm hoping this will be a change. Um, but yeah, just podcasts are great because that gives you an opportunity to show how much this movie means to you. Because if you make a film that's small and all that, if somebody watches it and they don't really relate to the story, whatever. But if you go on to a podcast and you're talking about how much the story means to you, like I'll do a quick thing about cashing out. Like cashing out is a very meaningful story to me. Like the father-son relationship I based on mine and my dad's relationship. Like we after I turned 21, him and I like really connected playing blackjack together, and that's why I ended up writing the story, just because of my experience with that and just playing blackjack tournaments and such. The movie's about poker, so I kind of changed it for that reason. But just that father son connection, like the connection I experienced with my dad, because that was probably the closest we've ever been, was when we were doing that together. So that was really meaningful to me, and just a lot of relationships that was going on with people in my life. That was really important to me. So and like I said, it's film school, the movie. I mean, the whole movie is an allegory just about my career and just wanting to do something bigger with my life. And, I hope that kind of showed on screen. I'm not trying to say it's the most original movie people have ever seen. That's definitely a criticism I've seen before. But, it's a story that's deeply meaningful to me. It was a story that was deeply meaningful to me. It was an allegory to my life at that point that I was making the film. So I hope people can relate to that, and that will give them a reason to watch. We put a lot of work into it. Um, I had to do a lot of crazy things to get this done, writing, shooting, directing, editing, all by myself to make it happen. Making a feature film is tough. Anybody who makes a feature film, I think, deserves to have it watched, just because of how just insane it is to even just make a feature, right? Like
Yep.
it's nearly impossible to make a feature film without money, without crew, and there are people who are doing it. Um, so yeah, there's hopefully I just made myself more likable doing that. That's not just a marketing tactic. That is how I actually feel. But
Yeah.
yeah,
No, and also massive congratulations on doing that film and doing it
thank you.
within that budget and getting it out there. I do think it's really incredible. Yeah, I know just how difficult it is, and it's I do believe that I echo what you just said, which is every single person who has their feature film and made and finishes deserves the right for it to be shown somewhere.
Yes.
And since you've also got such a personal connection to it, I mean, I think everyone's got some sort of a personal connection to their feature film, but since it is so personal with you and your dad and so on, moving slightly away from the business side and the marketing and so on, how did you deal with, because you must have had some negative feedback or criticism about the film. How do you deal with that? Because I think that's something that a lot of filmmakers struggle with, where they, I mean, I know this when I make like a TikTok video that's seen by a couple hundred people and someone messages me something that's even remotely not nice, my mood changes for the rest of the day. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of people deal with that. So I'm wondering how you dealt with that, both with the film and perhaps on your YouTube channel as well. I don't know if that's something that you experience. But yeah, how do you have any sort of coping strategies or any tips for how filmmakers can deal with that?
Yeah. So when the reviews came out for Cash, so most of them were positive in the beginning, but that was because it was a lot of friends and family reviewing it, and then they were just trying to be supportive. But once it got out to the masses, it was just like, just went completely downhill. And it bummed me out pretty hard. I didn't take it well, and I probably still don't take it well. So I don't know if I'm even the best person to ask this question, but like I mentioned before, I work for another YouTube channel, and we get a lot of hate. I mean, just an absurd amount of hate, more hate than I've ever gotten on my YouTube videos or on my film. And one thing I just realize is that people, for one, they just like to talk smack on the internet. So you're just going to have to take that with a grain of salt. But, and I can actually relate this back to the business portion as well. Your movie's just not going to be for everybody, and that's okay. That's something I just never realized when I was growing up. Like you want everybody to love your work. Whatever you put out, you want everybody to love it. And there's the cliche quote. I can't remember. You can have like the sweetest peach in the tree, but some people just don't like peaches, right? And I think once that's kind of grown on me over the past couple of years more than it has any other time in my life. And I just at this point, you just kind of have to take a step back and analyze it, I guess. Like, is this person saying this because they just don't like the movie? Because like I used to fight people too, like, oh, I made this for $2, so no duh that it looks the way it does. Like, once you made your movie, it's no longer, and you put it out, it's no longer yours, it's the audience's. It doesn't matter, all the struggles that you went through. It doesn't matter that, like you didn't have lights that day, so your shot's a little darker, or that, you didn't have a sound person and, somebody bumped the lav and, now your sound doesn't sound great, or you left a refrigerator running like I did. Like, once your movie's out there, all of that kind of goes out the door, and you can fight people to the death on it. But at the end of the day, it just doesn't matter, right? Like, be proud of your work and just let people have their opinion. You can disagree with it and do disagree with it. That's fine. But my best advice is just, I guess, just ignore it. Like, I know that's harder to say than in reality, and I've not been the best, proponent of that, like being able to do that. But just ignoring it and just realizing, like I said, just not everybody is going to love your film. Not everybody's going to understand the struggles that you went through. And that's okay. Like you know the struggles, your friends and family will know the struggles, but, just let it be.
Yeah, I think what you just said there really resonated with me, and I do think it applies to both filmmaking as well as marketing and marketing your film and putting out content on social media and so on. And I think that's the main message over here is if you're everyone's cup of tea, you're just a mug. And it's this kind of saying that a lot of people have within marketing, which is you're going to have to piss people off and create
Yes.
something that some people absolutely hate in order to create something that people love. And actually, your audience is going to be the 20% of people that you're like, this is who this film is for. These people will
Yes.
love the film. And in order to make a film that those people love, the rest of the 80% must hate it. Because trying to cater to that 80%, you will create something that will be mediocre to that 20% that's your real target audience. And so it's really asking yourself, those people who hate your film, are they even within your target audience? If they're not, ignore it. If they are, then try to take a look at it and see, okay, maybe this is constructive criticism.
And another point there too, with that 20% that is going to be a fan of your film, the vocal minority is always going to be who's in your comments section, who's leaving reviews. I don't know why they do it, but you have to remember that is a vocal minority. People who love your work are not always going to like, comment, leave a review, etc. We can beg for it, but the reality is the majority of people who enjoy your work are probably not going to leave you any positive feedback on it, which is, it can be frustrating because you're like, I need that validation to keep going. But, like my validation right now is I saw $700 on my Tubi account from last month. Okay, so that means a ton of people watched it, liked it, finished it, and that should be enough, right? So don't always let the words of affirmation get in your way. If people are watching your movie, that should be a sign that people are enjoying it.
Yeah. And also ask yourself, when was the last time you went to a restaurant or a hotel or something and afterwards said, this experience was so great, I'm going to go and leave a review?
Yes.
Because I think for most people, you will have only ever left a review in your lifetime if you hated an experience, right? Yep. And that's just the truth, because we assume that if we had a good experience, people know we had a good experience, and therefore we don't need to leave that review. But if we had a negative experience, we want everybody to know. So yeah, I think that's also why there is always a sort of negative bias when it comes to reviews and comments and things like that.
Yes.
Yeah. I wonder, from your whole experience over the last couple of years of, making the film, self-distributing the film, what were your biggest lessons? What are the biggest things that now, knowing everything that you do, if you had to do that process all over again, or if you go on to make the next film, what are you going to do differently?
I would just start a little bit earlier, I would say, as far as like trying to figure out the marketing aspects of it. Like I know I've kind of pressed the marketing a lot, but one thing that I try to ask filmmakers on my channel is, what's the overall goal of your film? Are you looking to just make this as like an art piece and how it performs doesn't matter to you? Or are you looking to make money? Now, both of them can kind of tie together, but some people don't care if they make money. So they can just, it doesn't matter. They can throw their movie up on YouTube and call it a day. That's fine. Some people want to be able to be an artist, but get their film out there. Well, you're going to have to do things a little bit differently. And then I talk to a lot of filmmakers who are just looking to make money. So they're going to make things a little bit differently too. So the first thing that you need to do, and that I would do on my next film, is decide, what's my goal here? Is my goal to make just an art piece and get people to see it? Does it matter? Yada, yada. But, my goal is obviously to continue to make movies, because I would love for people to fund my movies, either if that's through crowdfunding or investors or whatever. Like, I'm trying to take baby steps into both of those avenues. So obviously I need to make money, which is one of the reasons why I talk about, how much my movies made, because I want to be able to show that I care enough to make sure that we're getting a return on our investment. So starting that process earlier, figuring out as far as distribution goes, like having a plan of action there. So like this is one of the reasons why I love talking to filmmakers too, like hearing about their experiences, because for a long time I said that I always said like Film Hub would be my first step. But now, since talking to Linda at Film Hub and talking to other filmmakers who have worked with indie rights, I'm starting to say maybe we should start here first. Maybe that's a better avenue, because they really know what they've got. At least that's what it seems. I don't know 100%. I'm not 100% sure, but from the people I've talked to, it seems like a very good experience and people are having some success with it. So just like trying to think a little bit more like what my ideas around distribution, like trying to have more of a plan there, and the type of film may dictate what avenue you need to take as well. Like I would love to make more horror films. So any of the methods I mentioned would probably work pretty well. But, if you're looking to make like a comedy or a drama or something like that, like my film is basically a drama disguised as a crime movie, you may have to have a different strategy for that. And I don't know, I may not necessarily know what the right strategy for that is. So doing a lot more research, obviously. Um, some other things I would do differently, I'd probably slim down. Like I would be a lot more targeted. So when I say film school to movie, I just threw, just everything everywhere, right? Like doing DVDs and doing the theatrical and all that. And I don't want to say any of it was a waste of time, but it may not make sense for me to do Blu-rays on my next movie. I would love to, but maybe I do like a small, like 50 Blu-ray special release or something for like the people who really want to support me and really want that. But if I made a horror movie, well, if I did like 1,000 copy release, well, that might make sense because that crowd wants physical media, right? Theatrical, same way. Like theatrical has changed. Like I don't have that theater chain in my back pocket anymore, so I would have to think of a different strategy for that. I may not do theatrical at all. I don't know. So I don't necessarily have a one size fits all strategy for what I'm going to do moving forward, but at least I know like I need to think a little bit more clearly before I make my next movie.
Mm. That's definitely really, really great advice there. And Alex, I just want to thank you so much for sharing all of the advice you've done, you shared over the last hour. I really do think it's going to be extremely useful for everyone who's listening or who's listened.
Awesome.
I'm going to put some links into the description to how people can find you. But could you just tell us a little bit more about, to everyone listening, how they can learn more about your movie, about your YouTube channel, and anything else that you might have coming up?
Yes, so I'll give ZB here a link to my link tree where you can find cashing out. I don't have a domain for it right now, so I need to figure that out. I used to have cashingout.com, but I don't have that anymore, so I need to figure that out. But you can find it in my link tree. The best place to find me would be on my own YouTube channel, which is my first and last name, Alex Srednoselac. I will link it for him so that way you guys don't have to spell my last name. But that is definitely the best way to find me. And of course, my email address, Instagram DMs, Facebook DMs, and all that are definitely open. Just my first and last name.
Great. Well, once again, Alex, thank you so much. Yeah, this has been a really, really interesting talk. So thank you for coming on and sharing all of these insights.
Thanks for having me.